Ah, the frying pan. A staple of the modern kitchen, or any kitchen really. These things have been used in some form or another since Mesopotamia, from all the way back in something like 10,000 BC. The Greeks had a form of them, the Romans had a form of them, and before the introduction of the kitchen stove, when people in Europe used hearths to cook their food, they had a three-legged pan called a spider that served the same purpose. As it is, the frying pan is about as basic of an idea as it gets, and dates back about as far as recorded history. Just think, the thing you use to scramble some eggs for breakfast in the morning has gone through millennia of innovations, yet stayed relatively the same with the same function. It's kinda crazy when you stop and think about it. With an item like this being so commonplace within civilized society for such a long period of time, it's unsurprising that these things have found their way into modern media like video games. It's just a basic thing these days that we don't really think about it, and it easily lends itself to background detail, being used as a weapon of some kind, or even the least likely of all things, actually being used to cook something. Here we're going to take a look at some freaking awesome frying pans, or frying pan related things, in video games, in no particular order. Alone in the Dark 2, T-Bone the Cook. The Alone in the Dark series is one of the early pioneers in the genre of survival horror, and was even around before the likes of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. While it kinda dove off the deep end with a poorly received reboot and cooperative multiplayer shooter that's kind of completely against the entire idea of being alone in the dark. I mean, the game's called Alone in the Dark, not cooperatively in the dark. But anyway, the series set a lot of standards for this kind of game. The original Alone in the Dark, released in 1992, had a great reception, and it was enough to warrant two more games in what's considered the classic Alone in the Dark trilogy. This second game was released in 1993, and it's a bit different thematically from the original, involving voodoo, zombie pirate gangsters, dressing up as Santa Claus, and of course, frying pans. Found within the kitchen of the Hell's Kitchen estate is the zombie pirate chef Tom Flattery, or T-Bone as he likes to be called. He's a crew member of the Flying Dutchman, a pirate vessel under the control of an individual named One-Eyed Jack. T-Bone takes on the role of cook for the crew, and while he may be good at cooking, he's also not too bad in a fight. For some unknown reason, this guy is rather skilled with his blowpipe and will fill you full of darts faster than you can eat a plate of eggs and bacon. Luckily, the kitchen is a wonderful place to find weapons, as it contains not only the cook, but also a frying pan that's both great for smacking the crap out of zombies, but can also block T-Bone's darts. If the cook manages to run out of darts, he'll pull out a frying pan of his own for a one-on-one duel. Pan to pan. Or you can take the coward's way out and just shoot him from a distance. Earthbound, Paula. Earthbound, also known as Mother 2, is the second game in the Mother series, but the first one released in North America in 1995. The game is a Japanese role-playing game, or JRPG, JRPG for short, and it's about a group of children with crazy abilities grouping together through friendship to kill what is basically a god, like so many other games in the genre. What sets Earthbound apart from its contemporaries is that instead of being set in a medieval fantasy land or some kind of steampunk universe, Earthbound is set within a world not too dissimilar from ours. This means that instead of wielding guns and swords, the main character, Ness, and his group of little friends use more modern and commonplace items. Ness himself will bludgeon enemies to death with a baseball bat, while his friend and party member Paula prefers to use a nice, shiny frying pan. While her specialty may be psychic abilities, sometimes they just aren't enough to get the job done. Rayman, the Candy Chateau. Rayman as a series has always had one big thing going for it, and that's its ridiculous amount of creativity, which is shown off exponentially in his first outing in 1995. Taking place in a world where random objects seem to have eyes for no reason and everything that's alive lacks limbs, you know there's nothing normal about anything in the world of Rayman, even for something as simple as a frying pan. All the way at the end of the game is the final level that takes place within the Candy Chateau. The first part of the level is what we're going to be focusing on, since Rayman finds himself doing some downhill snowboarding, but not with a snowboard or anything sensible. No, he's using a frying pan. While slippery surfaces are seen throughout the game, this is the only part where the frying pan snowboard is used. And while it fits the food theme of the level, it's weird that the developers put so much time and effort to create this mechanic only to use it one time, and only for a short part of the level at that. It's honestly a nice little reprieve from the game's overall ridiculous difficulty, since the original Rayman will kick your butt time and time again, having not only limited lives, but also limited continues per save file. I imagine many players never made it this far, due to that as well as the fact that the only way to unlock this level is by being a completionist and getting all of the collectibles found throughout the entire game up to this point. Frying pans are shown off a little bit before this level in the art-themed world with clowns in spacesuits riding them as hoverboards, because what else would an astronaut clown be doing with them? Honestly, it just makes sense. Attack of the Mutant Penguins, Bernard. Frying pans aren't only useful for defending yourself from undead pirates like in Alone in the Dark 2, they can also be helpful when dealing with an unyielding strain of mutant penguins. Sunrise Games didn't get the chance to release much in their short lifespan, and that may be partly due to their confusing and weird debut in 1995. Attack of the Mutant Penguins lets players take on the role of two different aliens, Bernard and some other guy who no one really cares about because Bernard has a frying pan! It's interesting to think that of all of the things humanity may have in common with extraterrestrials, it could be cookware. For some unknown reason, evil penguin clones are attempting to make their way to Earth, and also mutating themselves into giant green monstrosities. Using these little blue guys called gremlins to open treasure chests and collecting all of the letters of the word pan lets Bernard unleash pandemonium! But only kinda. The pan is originally kinda lame and can only stun enemies, but after collecting enough power orbs, this thing can lay the smack down thick. It can even be powered up to be thrown at a line of enemies, taking out many of them at once. While the confusing oddity of this game may not have led to its developer's success, it'll at least always be remembered for being that game where an alien can kill mutated penguins with a frying pan. Kirby Superstar Cook Ability. Ever since his debut in 1992, the pink puffball known as Kirby has found a place within many a video game player's hearts. This little guy's insatiable appetite has been fueling a heck of a lot of games since its inception, but anyone who plays the first few may be surprised to find one of the series staples missing. It wasn't until his sequel in '93 that Kirby got the mechanic to devour his enemies and copy their abilities. It wouldn't be till '96 that Kirby got his hands, or mouth rather in this case, on something that would give him access to the all-important frying pan. Chef Kawasaki. Appearing as a mid-boss in the Dynablade portion of Kirby Superstar, Kawasaki will use all of his cutlery knowledge on Kirby, even frying him up in his own pan if he gets the chance. Defeating and eating this guy will then give Kirby the cook ability, allowing him to clang a frying pan together and force his enemies into a pot to turn them into food. Now that is one powerful pan. Kawasaki is the only way to get this ability within Superstar, but it's made a return in other games, although on a limited scale due to being a very, very powerful thing to use. Kawasaki appears throughout the series in other ways as well, featuring his pan such as the Samurai Showdown minigame, and Kirby can use his own pan in the Bomb Rally minigame, a minigame about 4 Kirby smacking a bomb around with pans. 'Cause That seems like a really smart thing to do. The cook ability is also the most used ability in the Kirby cartoon show Kirby Right Back At Ya, making the pan a rather prevalent placement within Kirby's arsenal. Power Stone 2 Gourmand. Power Stone 2 features a multitude of fighters. You got your ninja girl, your muscle-bound giant, and of course the freaky whatever thing that no one really wants to associate with. Sorry, Jack. But it does have one character that trumps the others when it comes to the use of frying pans, and that is the character Gourmand. While Gourmand may have had to wait till the 2000 release of Power Stone 2 instead of being a character in the first game, don't think that doesn't mean he doesn't have the chops for a fight. As it is, a kitchen is a place full of dangerous items, and just because he's a chef doesn't mean he can't throw down. Wielding both a cleaver and a frying pan at the same time, Gourmand is out to shred the competition and put his enemies in hot water. Be it bludgeoning, scolding, smacking, or frying, this is one man who knows how to use a pan. Also, he can turn into a dinosaur for some reason. I'm not sure how that one fits into the chef theme, but dinosaurs are pretty cool, so who really cares? Team Fortress 2 The Pan Weapon. Team Fortress 2 is a class-based first-person shooter that's changed a lot since its initial release in 2007, and one of those things that's had a big effect on the game has been the introduction of new weaponry. Added as a promotional item for Left 4 Dead 2, the pan in of itself is nothing all that special. While it originally could only have been wielded by the Soldier and Demo Man classes, it has since become available to everyone but the Spy and Engineer, because I guess backstabbing people with a pan would be too unrealistic. While the base pan isn't all that astounding at first glance, frequenters of Team Fortress 2 may find that many people use it anyway. It's great for the Demo Knight subclass that's done by playing as the Demo Man and equipping a shield so you can charge at enemies and close the distance, putting them easily within pan smacking range. There's even a golden variant of this weapon that can be found, although it's really super freaking rare. It's a shame that the pan is nothing more than a reskin of any class's basic melee weapon, but there is one thing that people have learned over the years. A hidden statistic not stated within the item's description. The pan will always do crit damage, even when it doesn't. Left 4 Dead 2 Pan Weapon. If we're going to talk about the pan in TF2, we can't not talk about the game that weapon is supposed to promote in the first place. Released in 2009 as a sequel to the original 4-player co-op zombie murderathon, Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2 did a lot to improve upon the game's design. So much so that Valve decided just to put the first game into the second one at some point. While Left 4 Dead 2 may have had a lot of guns available for shooting zombies, melee weapons are really one of, if not the most powerful kind of weapons within the game. They can make quick work of just about anything, but you may want to be careful what you decide to get close enough to use them on. There's a wide variety of melee weapons as well, anything from sporting equipment to ancient weaponry, and even the good old classic chainsaw. But why would anyone use any of that crap when they can use a frying pan instead? Sadly, the pan can only be found in a couple of levels within the game, but it does do a fantastic job of making zombie grits, and is extremely satisfying to use thanks to the sound effect Valve gave it when it hits a zombie. I could listen to that all day. Dead Rising 2 Anton Thomas. Talking about zombies and pans would be impossible without mentioning the Dead Rising series, especially Dead Rising 2. Changing its location from a large multi-fortune city, something more akin to the Vegas Strip, Dead Rising 2 adds a lot to the series with combo weapons and new enemies to deal with, but keeps some things the same, like the frying pan. Pans are commonly found within kitchens throughout Fortune City, and can not only be used to smash in the faces of the unending living impaired, but can also be heated up on a stove for some extra experience points. Doing so will also allow the game's protagonist, Chuck Green, to sear said faces clean off. Chuck isn't the only one with a fascination for cookware, as Chef Anton Thomas has a fondness for them as well. This so-called king of cuisine loses his mind when the zombies are unleashed into the nearby area, and starts thinking like them, using a new ingredient for his meals that you could probably guess. When Chuck finds that Anton has taken someone hostage with the idea of having them for dinner, it's time for a throwdown, but Anton knows his way around a kitchen, and apparently has an infinite supply of frying pans to harass Chuck with. Getting hit with a pan will knock you over and leave you stunned and open for attacks for a short time, and if you aren't careful, Anton's next dish just may include ground Chuck. Witcher 3, a frying pan, spick and span. Geralt of Rivia is a hardened killer of monsters and protagonist of CD Projekt Red's Witcher series of games. While the games are loosely based off of a series of books, they've really become a thing of their own over the years and aren't afraid to cover pretty much any kind of topic, including frying pans. In the third game in the series, Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt, Geralt finds himself in an area called White Orchard, and while the grizzled monster slayer is usually too busy slaying said monsters for most mundane things, there is one particular old lady with a seemingly basic side quest that grabs his attention. It seems she lent her frying pan to someone, and for some unknown reason, they've refused to return it. It's rather nice of Geralt to take time out of his usually busy and bloody day to go after said pan, and he even discovers that things aren't quite as innocent as they seem to be along the way.
It was the soot the man needed. He scraped it off to make ink. Must have had an urgent letter to write. Urgently burned some other documents too.
And the other fellow?
Dead. Round up a few boys and bury him outside the village. Deep, so the necrophages don't dig him up. And take my advice. Don't mention this to the Nilfgaardians.
Sultan Sanctuary, Chef Class. Sultan Sanctuary is a rather difficult game released by Ska Studios in 2016. These guys have made some interesting games before, but it wasn't until they tried their hand at a 2D RPG inspired by Dark Souls that they really hit the mark. There are a wide variety of classes to pick from when creating a character in Sultan Sanctuary, but one stands out from the others. Players could play as a paladin or even a rogue, but why limit yourself to something as mundane and standard as that when you could be a chef instead? Choosing this class not only gives players a bunch of potatoes to throw at enemies right off the bat, but also equips them with a good old trusty frying pan. This thing can be wielded with one or both hands and can make quick work of low-level enemies if you know how to use it right. The problem is, being an improvised weapon, it's not the most ideal thing to use when taking on more powerful foes littered throughout the game. Supposedly, though, the pan can be upgraded to become one of, if not the most powerful weapons in the game. But it's gonna take you a long time to get there, and I chose the chef class, not the doctor class, so I don't have much in the way of patience. Well, there you have it, some freaking awesome frying pans that can be found within video games throughout the years. Be it as an improvised weapon to deal with hordes of aliens or the undead, or something more purposeful, frying pans seem to be a thing that's here to stay within gaming. There are plenty more examples that can be found out there for those with a keen eye and the drive to discover the pan, so feel free to post any you happen to know of in the comment section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later.